Imagine a rookie stepping onto the scene, and within hours, shattering records that took legends decades to build. Shedeur Sanders didn't just launch a jersey line, he triggered a retail earthquake so powerful it sent Nike's entire supply chain into emergency mode. Servers crashed, stores sold out before the doors even opened. Executives who thought they'd seen everything were left speechless. But here's the real shocker. This wasn't just a product drop. It was a cultural moment, years in the making, engineered with precision. And the ripple effects? They're rewriting the future of sports marketing, athlete contracts, and even how fans around the world connect with the game. So, how does one player go from rookie to industry disruptor overnight? Let's break down the phenomenon that has every competitor scrambling and every fan asking the same question. Is Shedeur Sanders building the next billion-dollar empire right before our eyes? The launch wasn't supposed to look like this. Nike had projections, spreadsheets, carefully modeled sales curves. But the moment Shedeur's merchandise went live, those numbers became irrelevant. Within the first hour, transactions didn't just hit expectations, they obliterated them. What Nike thought would take a full day to sell, fans cleared out in 60 minutes. Traffic poured in so fast that Nike's own website couldn't keep up. Servers crashed not once, but 3 different times as fans spammed refresh buttons, desperate to lock in their orders. By the time the West Coast was even awake, distribution centers were already reporting complete sellouts. Entire inventories vanished before certain stores even had a chance to open their doors. Behind the scenes, chaos erupted. Reports claim Nike CFO Matthew Friend was blindsided as live dashboards lit up with numbers that didn't make sense. An emergency executive briefing was called within hours. And according to insiders, Phil Knight himself, the co-founder of Nike, picked up the phone demanding answers. When the founder is calling in the middle of a product launch, you know it's bigger than business as usual. And here's the part that stunned even seasoned executives. In just 72 hours, Sanders' line generated more revenue than some established stars managed in entire quarters. Think about that. A rookie outpacing names that have dominated the league for years. This wasn't just a spike, it was a seismic shift. But the real story is why this happened and why no other athlete's launch looked anything like it. At first glance, it looked like a spontaneous frenzy. Fans rushing online, crashing servers, wiping out shelves. But here's the truth. None of this was accidental. The explosion wasn't just demand. It was years of careful orchestration. Shedeur Sanders didn't walk into the NFL like every other rookie. While most athletes waited for big brands to build their spotlight, he was already running his own playbook. For years, he cultivated an audience that went beyond the traditional football demographic. He wasn't just speaking to hardcore NFL fans. He was reaching Gen Z, lifestyle communities, even international markets that usually ignore American football altogether. The result? A buyer base unlike anything Nike had ever seen. According to retail insiders, nearly 40% of purchases came from women, a number that absolutely demolishes the typical gender split in sports apparel. Orders spiked in Europe, Asia, and Latin America, regions that rarely move the needle for rookie NFL players. This wasn't just a jersey, it became a lifestyle badge.
And that's what Nike wanted, but couldn't manufacture on its own: authentic cultural relevance. Sanders didn't rely on the usual hype machine: press conferences, polished interviews, scripted ads. He built connection the modern way, through social platforms, direct engagement, and content that felt real. So when his logo finally dropped, fans weren't just buying fabric, they were buying into a movement they already felt part of. This is why the chaos hit harder than anyone projected. It wasn't random luck. It was the payoff of years spent crafting a brand that blurred the lines between athlete, influencer, and cultural icon. And while Nike scrambled to keep up with the tidal wave of demand, the real stress test was only just beginning, because the supply chain itself was about to snap. The numbers were staggering, but the real story started once Nike tried to deliver. Behind the glossy sales headlines was a supply chain on the verge of collapse. Almost overnight, Nike began pulling resources from other athlete lines just to keep Sanders products in circulation. Factories in Vietnam and Indonesia were suddenly flooded with emergency orders. Regional managers were told to reassign retail floor space, ripping down displays for established stars to make room for Sanders gear. Even distribution centers, normally models of precision, were overwhelmed, reporting inventory shortages before new shipments could even be logged. Think about how extreme that is. Nike wasn't just adjusting projections, they were rewriting their entire operational playbook in real time. Trucks rerouted, warehouses reprioritized, production schedules torn up and rebuilt from scratch, all for one rookie's launch. Insiders describe it as a reshuffling on a scale we haven't seen since the Jordan era. But this time, it was happening in the middle of an age defined by globalized production and razor-thin logistics. Shifting entire supply lines isn't something that happens quietly. It sends ripples across factories, retailers, and markets worldwide. And here's the kicker. Every move Nike made to boost Sanders' stock meant another athlete lost space, attention, or resources. Internally, this was no longer just about fulfilling demand. It was about rewriting Nike's hierarchy. But the supply chain struggle was just one half of the storm. While Nike scrambled to keep Sanders' gear flowing, their competitors were watching in disbelief, and they weren't about to sit quietly. While Nike was drowning in orders, the rest of the industry was in full-blown panic. Adidas executives reportedly convened emergency meetings within days of the launch. Their question wasn't just, how did we miss this? It was, what do we do now? Puma, Under Armour, and New Balance weren't far behind. Each brand launched what insiders call reaction drills, reviewing rookie scouting pipelines, fast-tracking endorsement talks, and even considering partnerships with athletes they'd previously overlooked. Sanders' success didn't just shake Nike's balance sheets, it forced the entire industry to rethink how they evaluate talent. The unsettling truth for Nike's rivals was this: market share battles in sports apparel are usually fought in inches. A clever campaign here, a seasonal boost there, but Sanders delivered Nike a knockout blow, an instant leap forward that no one saw coming. For Adidas, who've been clawing back relevance with bold collabs and soccer dominance, this moment felt like a direct hit. For Under Armour, still fighting to recover after years of decline, it was a wake-up call they couldn't afford to ignore.
And perhaps the most embarrassing part? The opportunity had been sitting in plain sight. Sanders wasn't an unknown. He'd been building his personal brand since college, blending football talent with cultural savvy. Yet somehow every other brand passed on him or hesitated, while Nike went all in. Behind the scenes, rival executives now admit it was more than just a miss. It was a blind spot, a failure to recognize that athletes are no longer just measured by stats, but by their cultural reach. And that realization stings, because it means the old playbook is obsolete. But while competitors scrambled to catch up, Sanders' deal itself was already sending shockwaves, because the money, structure, and stakes behind it were unlike anything the industry had seen before. Behind the hype and headlines sat a contract unlike anything the industry had ever seen. Nike didn't sign Shedeur Sanders with a standard rookie endorsement deal. Instead, they structured his agreement with aggressive incentives, merchandise royalties, and even whispers of equity participation. In plain terms, Nike wasn't betting on a quarterback, they were betting on a cultural phenomenon. At first, it looked like a bold but calculated gamble. Sanders had the charisma, the audience, and the bloodline, but rookies rarely justified deals of this magnitude. Nobody, not even Nike, anticipated what came next. The sales explosion was so extreme that within days of launch, urgent renegotiations were already on the table. Insiders say Sanders representatives are now demanding one of the richest rookie endorsement packages in sports history. And here's the shocker: Nike isn't pushing back. They understand his value transcends traditional athlete economics. This isn't just about jerseys, it's about building a billion-dollar ecosystem where Sanders sits at the center. If these negotiations land where many expect, the structure could reset the entire industry. Future rookies may no longer settle for flat endorsement checks. They'll chase royalties, ownership stakes, and performance-based bonuses that give them real skin in the game. For years, stars like Jordan or LeBron set the model, but Sanders might be rewriting it, dragging the playbook into an entirely new era of athlete empowerment. And for the rest of the league, every agent, every player, and every brand is watching closely. Because the way Nike compensates Sanders won't just affect him, it could redefine how the next generation of athletes negotiate their worth. But money is only part of the story. What really makes Sanders rise different is how he positions himself, not just as a player, but as a cultural architect building something far bigger than football. Most athletes sign deals and let the brand do the heavy lifting. Sanders flipped that model upside down. Instead of waiting for scripted commercials or press tours, he became the architect of his own cultural narrative. His strategy is simple but powerful. Skip the polished interviews, skip the staged photo ops, and talk directly to fans. Every post, every clip, every live stream feels raw, authentic, and personal. That authenticity is his superpower, and it's why fans don't just follow him, they trust him.
Take the logo, for example. The sleek SS design with a crown woven into it wasn't just a branding exercise. Sanders personally approved it after more than a dozen design iterations. It's not just a football emblem. It's a statement of ambition, heritage, and identity. Fashion influencers are already pairing it with luxury streetwear. Celebrities are wearing it in music videos. Young fans treat it as a lifestyle badge, not just sports merch. And here's where Sanders breaks away from the pack. He isn't just an athlete endorsing a product, he's shaping a movement. He understands the algorithms, the engagement cycles, the way culture spreads. In a sense, he operates less like a rookie quarterback and more like a Fortune 500 marketing department wrapped in shoulder pads. Even Nike, with its decades of dominance, had to admit Sanders was teaching them how to connect. Their typical playbooks, endorsement ads, magazine spreads, TV commercials, couldn't match his digital footprint. So Nike leaned in, letting Sanders steer the cultural side of the launch. The result? Organic hype that no ad spend could buy. And the ripple effect is massive, because when the culture buys in, performance becomes secondary, or at least it does until the pressure mounts. And for Sanders, the scrutiny of proving it on the field was just beginning. Hype can move products, but it can't survive without performance. And that's where Shedeur Sanders separates himself from every manufactured next big thing. Because while the sales numbers shocked the industry, his play on the field gave those numbers credibility. Training camp footage alone was generating millions of organic impressions. Clips of Sanders dropping pinpoint passes, threading needles into tight coverage, and carrying himself with unshakable poise lit up social feeds. Coaches and analysts alike noted his decision-making, his accuracy, and maybe most importantly, his swagger. That swagger wasn't fake bravado. It was confidence forged from preparation, and it resonated just as much with fans as the jerseys did. This matters because fans don't just want a brand, they want proof. Every completion, every touchdown, every clutch moment becomes validation that they're not just buying hype, they're buying into a winner. And for Nike, that synergy is gold. The stronger Sanders looks on the field, the more bulletproof the merchandise movement becomes. But with success comes a magnifying glass. Every game Sanders plays now carries double weight. One part scoreboard, one part cultural stock price. Every highlight fuels demand. Every misstep risks headlines. That's the burden of being more than an athlete. You're both performer and brand in the same moment. And still, Sanders wears it like it was designed for him. Cool under pressure, steady in the spotlight, and always aware that what he's building is bigger than football alone. Which leads to the next evolution of this story, the long-term blueprint that turns a record-shattering launch into a sustainable global empire. What makes this story even bigger is that it didn't stay confined to the United States. The Shedeur Sanders phenomenon went global almost overnight. Nike wasted no time transforming its flagship stores into full-blown Sanders showcases. Window displays in New York, London, and Tokyo swapped out long-established stars for floor-to-ceiling Sanders visuals. Dedicated sections inside stores offered exclusive colorways, custom embroidery, and interactive experiences where fans could design their own Sanders gear on the spot. Store associates weren't just selling product, they were trained to tell his story, turning every purchase into an emotional connection.
And the international numbers stunned analysts. European markets, where American football barely registers, started showing spikes in demand. In Asia, Sanders merchandise began trending alongside global streetwear drops. Latin America reported shortages as retail partners begged for more inventory. For Nike, this was proof that Sanders wasn't just a football star, he was becoming a global icon. The genius here is diversification. By expanding Sanders' reach across multiple continents, Nike insulated the brand from regional volatility. Even if US football interest hit a ceiling, international demand could carry momentum. And that's exactly the kind of safety net that billion-dollar empires are built on. But global reach doesn't just happen with supply chains and storefronts. It's also about perception, turning Sanders into a lifestyle figure that transcends sport. And nowhere was that more obvious than the booming resale market, where his products weren't just fashion statements, they were investments. If you really want to understand how deep the Sanders wave runs, look past the official Nike store and into the resale market, because that's where the phenomenon turned into something almost surreal. Within hours of launch, Sanders gear was flooding StockX, Grailed, and sneaker forums. Prices weren't just creeping up, they were detonating. Limited edition drops that retailed for under $100 were flipping for 10 times their value within a day. Some collectors were reporting markups pushing past 1,000%, the kind of inflation usually reserved for Supreme box logos or rare Jordan releases. And it wasn't just hardcore sneakerheads driving the frenzy. Everyday fans who managed to snag a hoodie or jersey realized they were holding an asset. Some treated it like an investment portfolio, listing, trading, flipping, while others refused to sell at any price, treating their Sanders pieces as cultural trophies. Authentication services were overwhelmed, scrambling to verify the flood of listings. Analysts noted that the resale volume on Sanders' launch rivaled numbers from established giants like Yeezy drops. Think about that, a rookie quarterback competing with global fashion icons in the aftermarket. This wasn't just commerce, it was validation. When resale prices skyrocket, it sends one clear message: people believe the product has staying power. And for Sanders, that meant his brand had officially crossed over into the same category as luxury streetwear and limited edition collectibles. But the frenzy wasn't only about scarcity. Part of the magic came from the way Sanders and Nike fused technology into the experience, meeting Gen Z exactly where they live. If there's one thing Gen Z demands, it's that the digital and physical worlds blend seamlessly. And that's exactly where Shedeur Sanders' launch hit another level. Nike didn't just sell clothes, they built an experience. Fans could try on Sanders gear virtually through augmented reality features in the Nike app. Blockchain authentication stamped every limited drop, cutting off counterfeits before they could even hit the market. Digital collectibles were bundled with physical purchases, letting fans own a piece of the moment both in their closets and in their crypto wallets.
And then came the gamification. Buyers weren't just checking out, they were leveling up. Loyalty rewards unlocked exclusive access, hidden merch drops, and even direct digital shoutouts from Sanders himself. For a generation raised on Fortnite skins and TikTok trends, this wasn't marketing, it was second nature. What made it even more powerful was Sanders' personal involvement. Insiders say he wasn't just a face on a campaign, he sat in on development meetings, pushing for features that felt authentic to his brand. That mattered, because Gen Z has a built-in radar for gimmicks. If the tech feels forced, they'll call it out instantly. But with Sanders guiding the rollout, the innovations felt organic, not corporate. The result? Fans weren't just buying merchandise, they were entering a digital ecosystem where Sanders himself was the hub. And that gave Nike exactly what it wanted: a direct pipeline to the next generation of consumers who value connection just as much as product. But while Nike and Sanders were busy locking down the future, the rest of the industry was realizing this wasn't a one-off event, it was a permanent shift. By this point, it was clear. Sanders wasn't just a breakout star. He was a disruptor, forcing the entire industry to rewrite its rules. Contracts? No longer just about salary and shoe deals. Suddenly, digital rights became part of negotiations. Athletes weren't asking for commercials. They wanted royalties, ownership stakes, and control of their brand's digital footprint. Scouting? It wasn't just about 40-yard dash times and vertical jumps anymore. Executives were now measuring TikTok reach, Instagram engagement, and YouTube consistency right alongside touchdowns and tackles. An athlete's follower count could now matter as much as their stats. College athletics? The NIL pipeline transformed overnight. High school athletes started building brands before they'd even declared for college, hoping to replicate the Sanders effect. Agents scrambled to learn influencer marketing as fast as they studied playbooks. And rival brands? They were no longer just chasing performance stars. They were hunting for cultural connectors. Adidas doubled down on musicians and artists. Under Armour leaned into authentic grit campaigns. Puma courted niche communities. New Balance experimented with non-traditional partnerships. Everyone was searching for their Sanders, but the hard truth was this: lightning like that doesn't strike twice easily. Industry insiders admit what's happening feels like a Jordan moment, but faster, louder, and spread across more platforms. Back then, the revolution was about sneakers. Now, it's about culture itself. The ripple effects stretch beyond sports. Business schools are writing case studies, marketing conferences are naming entire panels after the Sanders playbook. Academic researchers are dissecting how one rookie quarterback managed to shift consumer behavior across demographics. And yet, with all that momentum, the story wasn't without tension, because every revolution sparks pushback, and Sanders' meteoric rise was no exception.
Traditionalists argue this isn't football anymore. It's a fashion show. They claim the hype machine overshadows the actual game. Some pundits insist merchandise sales don't matter if he can't win on Sundays. Others warn that blending culture, commerce, and performance this tightly is a dangerous gamble. Then there's the microscope. Every throw, every interview, every Instagram post scrutinized. One slip in performance or one off-brand move on social media could ripple into headlines, stock prices, and fan sentiment. The bigger the spotlight, the smaller the margin for error. And behind closed doors, even Nike executives acknowledge the risk. Rookie sensations burn bright, but they can fade just as quickly. Injuries, inconsistent play, or off-field distractions could unravel what feels unstoppable today. The resale market and hype machine don't forgive weakness, they amplify it. But here's the twist. Sanders seems built for this pressure. What others see as a burden, he wears like part of the uniform. That swagger, that unshakable confidence, it's not just performance theater, it's the armor that allows him to thrive in chaos. The backlash is real. The expectations are crushing. But for Sanders, the pressure isn't a threat, it's fuel. And that's what makes the next phase even more fascinating. Because what he and Nike are building is bigger than merchandise, bigger than hype, and maybe even bigger than football itself. Step back from the servers crashing, the resale chaos, and the supply chain scramble, and you realize something bigger is happening here. This isn't just about a rookie selling jerseys.
It's about a fundamental shift in how athletes, brands, and fans interact. Shedeur Sanders has become proof of concept for a new model, one where cultural relevance is just as valuable as touchdowns, and authenticity carries more weight than ad campaigns. Nike didn't just sign a quarterback, they partnered with a cultural architect. And that decision is now forcing every competitor, from Adidas to Under Armour, to rethink what talent scouting, contracts, and brand partnerships even mean. In the past, companies bet on stats. Now they have to bet on story, influence, and community. For sports marketing, this is a rewriting of the rulebook. For athletes, it's empowerment at a scale we've never seen before. And for fans, it's an invitation into something larger than sports, an identity, a movement, a chance to be part of history in real time. The bigger picture is this: Shedeur Sanders and Nike aren't just moving merchandise, they're moving the culture. And when culture moves, industries have no choice but to follow. The Shedeur Sanders x Nike phenomenon isn't just a headline, it's a blueprint. What started as a rookie product launch erupted into a market disruption, a cultural flashpoint, and an industry-wide reckoning. For Nike, it's validation. For competitors, it's a crisis. For athletes, it's a revolution. And for consumers, it's proof that sports merchandise is no longer about gear. It's about identity, belonging, and movement. The numbers are staggering, the hype is undeniable, but the story is still unfinished. Every pass Sanders throws, every collection Nike releases, every cultural moment that extends beyond football will determine whether this is a fleeting explosion or the foundation of a billion-dollar empire. Either way, the rules have already changed. Sanders has redefined what it means to be an athlete in the modern age. He's not just playing the game on the field, he's rewriting it off the field. The question now isn't whether this moment matters, it's how far it will go and how many will follow the path he's just carved into history.